present in the following way. In naturally occurring timeless awareness, the ultimate heart essence, there is no causality, so the abyss of samsara is crossed. There is no better or worse, so samsara and nirvana are an integrated mandala. There is no error or obscuration, so the three planes of conditioned existence are seen through incisively. There is no causality in the essence of awareness as such, naturally lucid in all its nakedness, and so the pitfall of samsara and the abyss of happiness and suffering are timelessly crossed. While the whole of samsara occurs, due to the unceasing nature in which causes and effects manifest, awareness in its very essence never existed as any cause or effect. For this reason, it has no error or obscuration, no quality of better or worse. So whatever manifests, samsara or nirvana, constitutes an integrated mandala in light of awareness. In actuality, this has never existed, and so one's mind is at ease. Within the scope of awareness, which has never existed as anything, it makes no difference what arises and abides therein. For everything is timelessly free, in never having known existence. This being so, it is simply a matter of remaining in the realization of that in all its immediacy. Other than this, although one might speciously posit something to be, quote, Buddhahood, unquote, in actuality nothing whatsoever has improved, because there has been no wavering from what is, like space, fundamentally unconditioned. A deep immersion in awareness, composed by the master Garb Dorje, states, given evenness, in which objects are not conceptualized and mind is not reified, body and mind dwell as a matter of course in the expanse of that evenness. Regardless of how awareness appears to arise, as a matter of course, there is no wavering from this expanse of evenness. Objects with characteristics have no existence as objects, for there is abiding in a state of deep immersion. Timelessly there is no duality, and so no distinctions can be made. No distinctions can be made between ordinary beings and Buddhas, between samsara and nirvana. What has substance and what lacks substance are equal in basic space. Buddhas and ordinary beings are equal in basic space. Relative and ultimate reality are equal in basic space. Flaws and qualities are equal in basic space. Up, down, all directions are equal in basic space. Therefore, when arising, things arise equally, without being better or worse. The precious treasury of the way of abiding, Longchen Robjan. Welcome to the 12-Step Buddhist Podcast, episode 59, Executive Function, and continuing with Practices of a Bodhisattva, number 17. Even when someone who is your equal or inferior, driven by spite, seeks to defame you, to place him on the crown of your head, with the same respect you would accord your guru, is the practice of a bodhisattva. Even when someone who is your equal or inferior, they're less than me already. To begin with, you're already less than if I'm looking at you from an typical alcoholic or addict point of view, we've all admitted this hundreds of times, thousands of times in meetings over the decades. It's a well-known fact that we look out and judge your outsides based on our insides. So we start out with this error or misconception that there is a superior being, me, my ego, looking down over there on the inferior, lesser than in some way. So that being's already a loser and driven by spite. They spite us. They spite me because obviously they're jealous. And they seek to defame you. They're going to go slander your name all over Twitter or something. You can already see this. There's an error in perception in everything that we're doing, but we're going to do it. We're driven by our karmic density. We're driven by our infinite karmic accumulations, moment by moment. Intention, action, reaction. So I'm going to do a cool thing. Super weird. Talk about a boundary violation. I mean, so why would we put it? What does it mean? The guru on top of your head or on the crown. So the fontanelle, the ejection point of consciousness at the moment of enlightenment, ejects through the crown, the top of the head. It's for this reason, in teachings that have in more complete teachings that have this knowledge base, the ultimate honor, instead of even just bowing, is to put, something on top of where your enlightenment could happen. You don't want to put something up there that's going to block your enlightenment. You want your guru there, and your root guru is, another topic. I did write a book, How to Find a Spiritual Teacher. Probably should rewrite it. I'm in a better mood now, but there's information there for you on that, how to find a guru and getting a guru, and we have one. So however it is, though, you can obviously, in the 12-step Buddhist, I talked a lot about, substituting or integrating and just utilizing based on principle, say, I don't know. You're just putting things before yourself, but not in a defaming, or not in a rewounding, not in a toxic paralysis of a narcissistic toxic abuse syndrome where you keep accepting that sort of thing. But you would take the guru to the top of your head because your guru is the source of all blessings. Your guru can be your higher power of some sort, however you have that. Your teacher, you could say the teaching. But this is a Vajrayana perspective, the guru on the top of the head, and it is specific and unique to this perspective, so one should be clear on that. In my case, I would put my guru on top of my head, and that could be manifest as Guru Padmasambhava. For example, so with the same respect as you do that is the practice. You take the person who's a jagoff, and I'm sorry, but why we don't use the word jagoff anywhere outside of the Midwest, it's really it's a travesty, honestly, because it is a fantastic word. How do we really feel? Well, this friggin' jagoff over here, who's inferior to me, or at least not better than me, and is jealous and bitter, and they're just a hater. I'm gonna put that toxic sumbitch on top of my head. That seems like a boundary violation, but see, it is the practice of a bodhisattva. It's not the practice of a limitation. It's a practice of ultimate compassion. It's like you would treat that being to understand, as we read in the teaching in the beginning from Longchenpa. This is the kind of thing, I can't put really more words on it than that. Go back and start at the beginning of the podcast today and listen to that, or get the books and get the teachings and get the transmissions on that. But it is coming from this space that of equanimity, of equal rights. You want to be super lefty, you want to be equal rights on, how about the equal rights of that being in front of you to have everything they want and that they think they deserve, and all points are valid, and regardless of your point of view. That's a bodhisattva principled act. If one could, be aware of that and engage in it and practice it successfully to fruition, where it becomes automatic and spontaneous and not a labor not something that we have to convince ourselves or be convinced to do. An addict crawling into recovery is, come on, how much more convincing do you want? And every time we come to a spiral, come to a bottom, trip backwards or forwards down the funnel, due to our, all these things I've written about in these books, every time we find ourselves there, hey, it's the result of, those aces that I wrote about in compassion recovery for, a good chunk of us, most of us really. So, these things will cause us to spiral backwards, and it will require us that willingness that only a newcomer could have. You see, on all different experiences, levels, dimensions of being, different aspects of my humanity and how I interact with others and the goals that I have and challenges that I face and all of these things. Everything is subject to all of this application, and everything must be on the serious mystical journey, on the serious journey of a Bodhisattva, more specifically, not just a mystical journey, but something much more serious than that, with the same respect as you would your guru. Put him on top of your head. That's the practice of a Bodhisattva, because I see the essence of that being. And if I don't see the essence of that being, I do understand the teachings that I've been given, that the essence of that being and the essence of my being, if there is another being and a me being, a subject and an object, or an object and a subject, so to speak, that's the duality. But if it's not there, if I understand that it's not there, or if I've heard that it's not there, if I'm trying to understand that it's not there, or trying to understand that there is no there or not there, or up or down, or as Guru Garb Dorje was transmitting in this tantra, in this Dzogchen tantra, there's no up or down. It's referenceless. There is no it to be referenceless. So, as an addict in recovery, being tested and challenged by these things all the time, I can just pretend and put that person on top of my head for a sec with the blessings of my guru. Okay, some bitch, you're going on top of my head then. Ouchie walla. That's practice number 17. I might have to go back to like number 4 or something, because that one's pretty tough. That one is pretty tough. So what I use to understand what's happening for myself in recovery is the understanding of the brain. And this is really open. This has been the key to understanding myself, my recovery, and the application of Dharma principles in my life that you can even talk about in such a way that doesn't even sound like, or isn't even presented as Dharma, so it doesn't alienate anyone. You can read in Compassion Recovery. It's all principles based, just like it was in the 12-Step Buddhist, but this is the next expansion of that. So when we talk about making decisions, I'm going to read a couple of things. This is from Dr. Jim Hopper, who I quote in Compassionate Recovery. He's a teacher, professor at Harvard, and he wrote this theory up on his site, jimhopper.com. And this one's about executive circuitry, and I want to talk about what this is and as it relates to trauma and addiction and our recovery. So, quoting, "When we feel safe and have enough support from others and enough skills of our own, we can use our prefrontal cortex to notice, reflect upon, understand, tolerate, and manage painful and unwanted feelings in ourselves and in others. The executive functions of the prefrontal cortex can also help us to resist and overcome unhealthy habits and impulses. Some of these executive functions are called self-regulation capacities. Others play central roles in our capacities to attune to others and relate to them in healthy and fulfilling ways. The main focus of Dan Siegel's interpersonal neurobiology. We need these self-regulatory executive functions to heal from the effects of hurtful and harmful past experiences and to become free of addictions." So if you're reading Compassionate Recovery, when we go into the stress response, which I talked about in another podcast, in the window of tolerance, we try to understand these things, or what is actually happening in the brain, what's happening in our in our circuitry, then it really is partly, not wholly, but it really is a matter of self-regulation. And our self-regulation is out of whack because of our brain development adaptations or impairments, things that have gotten in the way of our developing whole circuitries, which are able to orient ourselves and respond to others in a normal, healthy way. Continuing. Importantly, we develop and can increase these executive circuitry functions primarily through our relationships with other people. For example, we first learned how to manage our fears and cravings or not from our parents, from how our parents managed theirs or didn't, and how they related to our emotions and behaviors. Those and other important relationships, however healthy or unhealthy, have played big roles in determining the capacities and habits of our executive circuitry. Unfortunately, some traumatic experiences, especially in early childhood, and some intoxicating substances can harm the executive circuitry. Fortunately, because the human brain has an amazing capacity to rewire and heal. In most cases, such damage is only temporary and or can be overcome by compensatory brain adaptations. So we'll pause there because there's a lot to it, and I want to just kind of move to another source from Harvard. In Executive Function and Self-Regulation, this center on the Developing Child Harvard University website. Executive function and self-regulation skills are the mental processes that enable us to plan, focus attention, remember instructions, and juggle multiple tasks successfully. Just think about your ability to do that in recovery, out of recovery, today. What was affected then, what's affected now, where are you at, what's the history of how you've functioned in some of these things in terms of being, have you been focused all your life? Or have you been distracted or somewhere in what causes you to focus or get distracted? How's your memory? Can you remember how to do things? Can you multitask? So continuing, just as an air traffic control system at a busy airport safely manages the arrivals and departures of many aircraft on multiple runways, the brain needs this skill set to filter distractions, prioritize tasks, set and achieve goals, and control impulses. When children have opportunities to develop executive function and self-regulation skills, individuals in society experience lifelong benefits. These skills are crucial for learning and development. They also enable positive behavior and allow us to make healthy choices for ourselves and our families. One more source, the famous Alberta Family Wellness Center. Executive function is like air traffic control. Executive function and self-regulation skills are the mental processes that enable us to plan, focus attention, remember instructions, and juggle multiple tasks. Like all of us, kids have to react to things happening in the world around them while also dealing with worries, temptations, and obligations on their minds. Think of a child's brain as a control tower as a busy airport. We had kind of the same explanation earlier. Effective mastery of these skills also helps children manage stress and avoid mental collisions, let's just say mental catastrophes along the way, because it says executive function skills are necessary for positive mental health. Okay, so the main idea of what I wanted to share with you about this, and how does executive function have something to do with our recovery? How does it have something to do with Dharma practice on the Bodhisattva path? Being a Buddhist in recovery or not, and just being in recovery and trying to be a healing being, a whole being that's healing. Some of the parts that aren't broken but are in need of love and affection and healing and medicine and so forth. So how we do that is all covered in all the brain stuff I did in the first many chapters of Compassionate Recovery. And we mentioned some of this about executive circuitry and executive control. Well, some of these things are impaired just in the moment of trauma. The other parts of the brain, say the amygdala or the fear response centers, respond or respond to internal not really happening stimuli, or external happening but may or may not be an actual level of threat that we are experiencing it as response. And that overrides the prefrontal cortex, where this executive functioning happens primarily, right? So, I mean, it's attached to everything else because that's how it's a global functioning center. So it's attached to everything else, but it's its own center, right? The prefrontal cortex. And so when we're in trauma, and we're in a state of pain, and if we have those circuits burned in early and then later, and then we add some drugs, alcohol, and some addictions, and some years, and some more abuse, and some more trauma on ourselves and from others, and layer that all on, and then we're sober at some point, whether we got sober young or medium or old, we're clean and we're feeling it all like a raw fucking nerve, right? I mean, we're really just overwhelmed with the experience that's going on, and we don't know why. Well, this is why. The fire alarm is going off, and the executive control function that we can use to, as you alluded to in these things I'm reading, particularly in the earlier one, is that we can retrain. And this is the whole principle of compassion recovery, is that we understand this and we can retrain. And when we should know as addicts in recovery what we're doing, because it's going to help us understand ourselves and each other, and deepen our practice and deepen our experience of wholeness and healing, right? So we do need to go into, a little bit, a dibble-dabble, just, stick your toe in and understand a little bit about what's going on, and understand that now we use focus. Obviously, executive function. Now we use the ability to sort of have a focus and stay balanced while we're doing more than one thing. And all these other, clarity of thought. These things come about as the result of staying clean, obviously, keeping our therapy, keeping our circle of safety, circle of support, compassion circle, however you think about it, and just maintaining our own balance as individual spiritual beings, regardless of what community or something that we may be participating in our recovery, right? So this should make perfect sense, in that we have executive control problems from our lives, and now we have some responsibility to understand it, and since we understand it, now we have the ability to, and I think responsibility, I would say, to ourselves, obviously, to develop it. And to develop executive control and executive function, there's millions of things that we can do. In the Dharma capacity, all of these things, our visualizations, our practices of breathing, our sitting still and being able to embody the moment, doing our yoga, all these, there's a million. They're all over the world now, but you can read in my books and other books these types of skills that we can have. All of these are regulatory behaviors. As my teacher would say, there's the CEO, kind of at the helm up there, and the CEO is the ego and kind of thinks it's in control. But in the Dharma, there's no hope for the ego. And that's the difference between this and some New Age wishy-washy kind of thinking, right? And think about it. Absolute abandonment of self is what it says in recovery. Abandon ourselves to God as we understand God, in that context of 12-step. And how can we say, however, our heart of spirituality is our heart of compassion. I've gone 3 minutes over. I'm so sorry, but I'll let you go. I'll see you next time. Hey, buy a copy of Compassionate Recovery for you and a friend on Amazon, or order from any bookstore. Leave a review on Amazon. You're amazing. Thank you. Do the work and tell me how it worked for you. Even more amazing. All right, everybody. Peace out and namaste.